We're
on.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Dan and Don coming to you from the Clinical Trials Guru. And the subject we want to talk about today, this is an interesting subject that came up some time ago when I was working with an inpatient program. And this has to do with gender. We had a guy that came into the study. And this guy was actually, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he actually wanted to, wanted to get a sex change. He believed he was a woman. So typically on a unit, you keep the women and men separate. Even if they're on the same floor, you might have the women on one end, the men on the other end, so there's nothing going on there. They're not in and out of each other's rooms. Well, how would you accommodate somebody who's dealing with that situation? If it's a woman that thinks she's a man, do you put her with men? Because sometimes too on some of these units, there may not be showers in the rooms. You may have a common shower for women and a common shower for men. So how do you deal with that? What do you think, Dan? How would you deal with that?
Well, look, I don't know how I would deal with it, but I read articles, they were, up till recently, if not for every study, for most studies, they were excluding anyone in a homosexual relationship. And that's still true for some studies. There was studies where they're testing sexual dysfunction. I'm trying to say this without giving out too much because we're doing some of those studies.
Mm-hmm.
But they say specifically you have to be in a heterosexual relationship to be in a study. But these are outpatient studies. For these inpatient studies, it's a real issue because these people are going to be basically living together for weeks, even months at a time. And so it makes sense to separate the men and the women.
Right. And if you have somebody that feels that they're the other gender other than what their physical appearance shows, how do you deal with that? Now, from what I can remember, and this has been years ago, so don't quote me this in stone, they had to find some way to accommodate. Because number one, what I was told is that unless the study is designed specifically for something, looking for specific things that might exclude someone like that, like Dan was just referring to, if it's an open study where they don't have those exclusions, you have to find some way to try to accommodate that person some way reasonably. And that's what they would do. I can't remember the details of how they would do it, but it does require extra steps because, again, you want people to feel comfortable when they come in, and yet at the same time, you don't want to discriminate against someone out there just because they have a, they've chosen certain genders. Again, they may physically be one thing, but, they may want to be somebody else, and that's their prerogative. And they have to find a way to accommodate it. And I don't remember the specifics on it, but I think you have to deal with that. I haven't run across that too much; it's very rare. But that somebody brought that subject up, and I'm just going by past memories because I remember the study took place when he had to deal with this was, that had to be about 6 years ago. So, like I said, it's a long time, especially when you dealt with a lot of people.
Yeah, but it's definitely been until recently that homosexuals are not even allowed to participate in studies, and that's if they were honest about their sexuality. But these days, I think we're a little past that. But then you bring up a great issue, and it's more of a logistical issue.
Right.
For the inpatient study.
Because again, if you just using this as an example, you have a man that feels he's a woman, and everything about him, his demeanor and what he prefers is all feminine. Do you put him with women, even though he's still physically a man, or do you put him with the men? And that's not, or do you put them by themselves? Because typically a lot of these rooms were semi-private, and that's where the real issue came down to, is in semi-private room. Now, you put this person by themselves, they may not be comfortable with another man in there because, again, internally they're a woman. And everything about them and how they respond to things is feminine, is female. And so they may not be comfortable with sharing a room with the man. But yet, the other end, a female who's heterosexual may not be comfortable with them sharing a room with them because, again, their physical exterior is that of a male. So it's really a complicated situation. But on the other hand, again, you have to find some way to accommodate. And at the same time, if you're running a clinical study, for those that don't understand, it is a business. And the more patients you have in that particular study, then obviously the more chance you have at earning more income for your clinic. So if, let's say I have a unit that can fit 10 people, and I would like to have, let's say I have let's say I had 4 males, and I had 5 females, and I have 1 space left open with the male beds. What do? Do I deny this person? Do you explain it to that person, this is our situation? Maybe let them decide if they want to step into that and share a room with the male? Or would they rather wait until the next leg of the study when there's more openings, and then we can accommodate you that way, either give you a room by yourself if you're not comfortable, with being with the man in the room. So it was a very tough situation, and it was a very tough call, because again, you don't want to discriminate. That's wrong. Right. Not for that. But on the other hand, too, you don't want to put people in uncomfortable situations either. So
now, Don, you worked in the inpatient settings, right? So
I worked with inpatients, outpatients.
So the rationale behind separating the males and the females is just so that they don't sleep together, right?
Exactly. There's no hanky-panky going on, because a lot of times with these studies, you want to have some control over what's going on. And some of these studies require that you remain abstinent, and a lot of times because these medications haven't been tested in that particular area.
And I think they're really scared. The drug companies are really concerned about, the drug, and if should someone get pregnant.
And you got a liability on your hands. People want to sue.
So with homosexual relationships, it's not really there's no possibility of pregnancy.
No, that's an excellent point.
At that point, it becomes,
who's comfortable with what? Are they comfortable sharing, if they're physically a man, are they comfortable with sharing a room with another man? With the woman, are they comfortable with the woman? With the woman, it becomes a little bit more of a stretch sometimes, because there's a lot of questions involved.
Yeah, because I think the real reason why, they don't want the study participants, engaging in relations is just to avoid pregnancy at all.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
because you don't know what this medication is going to do to an unborn baby.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's like a huge liability there, and you have to take all precautions, outpatient or inpatient studies.
Yeah.
In the outpatient studies, what is it, a double barrier?
A lot of times it's double barrier method, and they, even on top of that, as great when the female is even uses spermicidal substance as well. So
that's like the number one thing they try to avoid in all clinical trials is pregnancy, because even if the male, let's say a male is in a study, and he's in a relationship with a female who's not in a study.
Exactly.
And he gets her pregnant, that's still a huge issue.
And it's still a huge issue.
It's still a humongous issue. We've actually had that happen.
That's why, in the consent form, you'll see it noted most of the time that you must be able to follow this protocol. If you cannot follow that protocol, they can't have you in the study.
Right.
And it's a very important issue.
So pregnancy and clinical trials, they don't mix.
Don't mix. Don't mix. Anyway, found that to be an interesting subject. So if you are somebody out there that fits that kind of genre, don't feel like that you shouldn't try out for clinical trials. If you have an interest in clinical trials and your makeup is one way versus what you feel internally, who you are, don't let that stop you from doing a clinical study.
There's a lot of other reasons why you shouldn't do a study, but your sexual preference is not one.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Dan and Don from The Clinical Trials Guru signing off. And again, that website is www.theclinicaltrialsguru.com. And if you have any input, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you.